webinar today with you guys. It's been great working with MAP over the last year or so. The Corporate Finance Network is a group of accountancy firms across the UK, and I brought them together probably 15 years ago. I started to build this because I could see that whilst the largest firms had all the tools and resources and databases and these quite expensive things that they needed to advise their clients on corporate finance, the smaller firms didn't. And the smaller firms were acting for the vast proportion of all the owner managed businesses in our country. So I knew that if we were going to advise business owners better to the highest level possible about growth and buying businesses and selling businesses and being properly capitalized and so on, then the accountancy firms that were advising them needed those resources. So that's what the Corporate Finance Network is. It's a little bit like a franchise operation in that we have some centralized systems, databases, access to skills and very specialist skills, and all the firms that are members can use that without actually having to have, you know, full-time staff on their books, if you like. And certainly when it comes to research and market intelligence and databases, then that's really crucial and makes a massive difference. So MAP joined us last year, and having been a fan of MAP as a firm anyway, I was delighted that they joined us and have really fit in well with the rest of the network. And are doing some brilliant things already now with their firms. Now they have access to all these extra systems and databases, which just means it's much more efficient for them to offer this work. And you know, that means that you don't have to go to a specialist corporate finance boutiques. You don't have to go to the biggest firms of accountants. You can work with your existing accountant, whether that's MAP in most of your cases on here, because they know you best. They already know that your plans, they understand your personal goals and your business goals. And that means that the advice they're going to be able to give you is going to be far more tailored to your needs. So delighted that Paul's asked me to come on and talk about value building today. But I thought I'd start off with just setting the scene a little bit as to who says what your value is and what is your value. And that all depends really on the position that you're in at the time. So at the moment, you may just be what we might describe as a lifestyle business. You know, you're running a business for your own purposes, you're earning a crust out of it, you're employing some staff, and you're running the way that you want to run it. And therefore, the value of a business to you may not be what a purchaser thinks the value is. But as Paul's quite rightly said, everybody at some point needs to exit their business. And as you'll see, I'll come to right at the very end, you really should be thinking about building valuation for a purchaser as soon as you start your business. So one of the best things my mum ever taught me, and there weren't much, I don't think, but one of the best, she certainly didn't teach me to cook, but one of the best things she did teach me was when you buy a house, make sure you can sell it. You know, you buy it and you invest in it with the view to ultimately selling it. Now, if you think about your business, potentially that could be your largest personal asset. So you really need to think about making sure that that's the best value it can be and that it is sellable. But we're going to come on to how you value and the different values shortly. And then I'm going to, you know, talking about why would you want to sell your business? Well, at some point, you know, I have a pretty horrendous saying that everybody exits their business at some point. It's either in an organized way or it's in a box. You know, it's a fact of life. We all have to exit our businesses. So why would you exit plan? Because it makes it so much simpler when you are ready to exit. You know, it makes it so much more attractive to the purchasers and the process much calmer, because it is incredibly stressful if you start on the journey of actually going through a transaction, whether you're buying or selling. So the calmer you can make that, the better for you, really. And you want to make sure that you're going to crystallize your value. So what is it that you do? Well, I'm going to give you 5 key ways that you can build a business value for every single type of business out there. But bearing in mind that you guys mostly are digital agencies, what you have got access to through MAP is a real amazing process. I say amazing, I built most of it myself, so I'm being a bit bragging a bit, but we have got the best exit planning processes that are available probably in the world, but definitely in the UK. We have refined the process for how to build value and how to make a business actually sellable. And MAP have got access to that. But what MAP have also done is they've refined it and curated it a bit so it's more specific just to the digital sector, digital agency sector. Therefore, you have got access to some brilliant tools, which mean that you can personalize your own action plan for your own situation, personal situation, your own business situation. So I would really recommend after this call that that's what you do next. You go to MAP and you speak to them about a personalized one-to-one exit planning program that they can work through with you. But as I said, today I'm just going to give you 5 things that every business can do anyway. When do you then start to build your business value, and when do you actually exit? So that's something I'm just going to come to first before we talk about the 5 different things that I suggest that you do. Now, if you were to look at this graph here, now this is supposedly a typical life cycle curve of a business. Now it might be, you know, up to 15 years, you might manage to get through that curve in 5 years. Every business is different, but just for an example here, maybe that's, you know, 2.5 million, 3 million, 3.5 million turnover up the right-hand side, could be profits, could be anything. But just to demonstrate, perhaps in the chat, you might want to put your answers. If you can change your answers to everyone, not just panelists. Paul, you'll have to shout the answers to these because I'm not going to be able to see them because I'm sharing my screen. When do you think a business owner should sell their business if this was their curve, to maximize their return? So when do you think is the best time to sell a business?
So A, B, C, or D is what?
A, B, C, or D, yeah.
Yeah.
Which in this particular example is year 6, year 9, year 12, year 14. So what types of answers are we getting?
Yeah, so it's basically rapid growth, isn't it? Starting to mature, starting to decline, and then rapid decline effectively. Yeah. So we've got ABB, AB, A.
Okay, so interesting. Now, I think A is a little bit early stage to sell because you haven't really proven all of that growth. You're starting to grow and you're going to be trying to convince purchasers that you're still growing. But if you sell at A, then you're losing the potential of that extra growth yourself and keeping it. At B, you've convinced everybody that that growth has happened because that's historical. And you've still got a little bit more growth to go. Now, you can still say that that's going to carry on that curve, that straight curve going upward like that, even though you might know that it might be leveling off a bit. So B will be the perfect time to sell. C is too late, and D is often when question number 2, when do they usually choose to sell? It's usually at D. So when things start to dip and the business owner's getting tired and they're losing energy, and momentum, then they decide they want to sell, and that's probably the worst time to sell. So now for you, what is your graph? What does your curve look like in your business? It might look nothing like this, but you need to understand where you are on that curve, on your life cycle curve, and therefore when are you going to reach point B? Now that's something that you can do with MAP, and you'll do that with projections, you'll do obviously historical accounts, your business strategy, your growth plans, and you want to try and plot what you think your graph's going to look like, because you need to know that by the time you get to B, you need to be ready to sell. Now, if you're anywhere before B at the moment, you should still be exit planning so that you're building value and you're making your business attractive. Now, how do we build value in a business? So it's obviously about profits, and it's about size, and it's about turnover. But look at these 2 businesses. These 2 businesses have the same turnover and the same profits. Business A, the owner dominates the sales. They're quite autocratic, and the operations and the way the business is run, they completely run the whole show. The working practices are not great. They're not very systemized. They're quite ad hoc. The equipment, the tech is quite old school. They haven't got a great profile on social media, and they've got few recurring customers, and the staff's quite quick turnover. So even though they're turning over a decent amount and making good profits, that's business A. Same business, but same size business, but business B has got a much better functioning management team. It's got a strategic approach to where they're going. They're always thinking about efficiencies and systems. They're investing in new tech and equipment. They're regularly in the trade press. They're award winners. They've got recurring customers, and they've got a loyal team. B is on the up, A is on the down. Yep. So even though their current profitability is the same, on paper, they may look like they have the same valuation, because if you take, a theoretical valuation is often based on the sector and the profitability. So if these are in the same sector, then you would say, well, they've got the same valuation. But of course, business B is going to have far more interest, far more purchasers interested in buying them than business A is. And what happens when you have more interest? You get competitive bidding and the value of the business goes up. So a paper valuation is worthless, really. Forget what the theoretical valuations are. That's a very, very rough guide. Really, in practice, the most attractive businesses get the most value, and business B in this case would be the most attractive, irrespective of the fact that both of them have got the same profitability. Because even on the first approach, if you like, the first interest, businesses might look similar because of the size of them. Once the purchasers start going under the bonnet and doing due diligence and digging around and understanding how that business operates and how that business is running, then business B is going to be far more attractive to them ultimately. So the final deal, when it's signed off, B would get far more than A, if A was sellable at all, even though it's making good profits. We are not an acquisitive nation. There are not that many acquirers, business owners. Perhaps, you guys on the call here, I don't know how many of you have ever bought a business. We are getting better, and certainly the digital sector is more acquisitive than most. But you won't find 10 purchasers lined up for every business. So you've got to be able to stand out and make sure that your business is really attractive. Okay, so let's go into the 5 different steps that every business can do. The first one, refocus. Refocus what you're doing and why you're doing it. So at the moment, you'll be running a business and you may not have thought about your exit particularly. You maybe think that's for older people. It might be, when you get to a certain age, then you might think about it. But as I've said, you need to start thinking about this from the beginning. So no matter where you are in your business journey, you need to be thinking about exiting already, just so that you build that value and you become attractive. Now, that means that the way you run your business from your point of view, your lifestyle point of view, may be different to how a purchaser is going to see your business. And therefore, you're going to have to change some things if you really want to build value. Now, that isn't going to be comfortable for some of you in some areas. If you are quite an autocratic business owner, if you want to do everything yourself, then you are going to find it difficult and a little bit out your comfort zone if you are going to be building teams and putting systems in place, and not something that you're 100% comfortable with. But what you have to focus on instead is, why are you building this business? Why are you not an employee? Why are you not a subcontractor? Why are you having sleepless nights and taking risks and taking on staff and being responsible for their salaries and growing a business that way? Why are you doing all this if it is not to crystallize that at the end of it and walk away with a lump sum to repay you for all of those risks that you've taken? So you have to make a decision. Am I going to build this business just for now and then walk away and never be able to sell it? Or am I going to build this business because I want to walk away with a lump sum? And if it's the latter, you need to start that now, really. So things like, not wanting to pay tax, doing everything you can to put everything through the P&L so that you don't have a big tax bill. That's fine for now, but that's not great if you're a purchaser looking at a set of accounts. So you have to realize that when you're about 3 to 4 years away from actually selling, the purchaser will be looking back at those accounts that you're filing, and they'll want to see gradual growth in turnover, in profitability and in cash flow. So bear that in mind, that the accounts that you file, even if you only file abridged or small accounts, the purchaser is going to see your full accounts, and you don't want them to be questioning why the profit's low in that year or that year, and you're trying to give them reasons of, oh, it's because we put extra costs through for this, or we put extra costs through for that. It's much easier if you can just show them it as it is, with a nice growing profitability, nice growing turnover. So be careful what you're focusing on, and what you're trying to achieve in the long run. But I would absolutely say keep it really focused on the valuation and the purchaser's view of your business in 3 or 4 years' time.
Raised a really good point there, Kirsty, because it's about that thing of what's right for you now is not necessarily what's right for you then. So, there's a big difference about the decisions that you should be making as a business if you're selling in 3 years versus if you're selling in 10 years. And of course, we don't all have a crystal ball and things don't work out exactly as you want. But if you've not even got a plan in the first place, you've got nothing to be agile with. So having a plan is to say, we're going to make decisions that are fitting towards building and growing a business at this point. And then at this point, we're going to make decisions that are based on maximising profitability. And as you say, whilst those areas that you've mentioned there, that if they were going through the business, during due diligence, you could explain them and extrapolate them from the P&L, you kind of don't get that chance if you've not made yourself attractive enough in the first place. And I can't emphasise that enough. I think often business owners talk about how to maximise the value and what's my business worth. Well, actually, nothing if nobody will buy it. It's only worth what someone's going to buy. And I think it's like, well, the guys from Cactus are on today, they've done their research, but it's like a fraction of a % of businesses that ever actually sell. So the big goal is to be attractive, first and foremost, I think. And as you say, when you're filing accounts on Companies House, they don't see the fact that, oh yeah, but they were just to save tax. They just see that you've not made enough money for them to be interested enough in the first place.
Yeah, that's right. And especially if they're larger businesses, larger purchasers, they don't do this thing that owner managed businesses do of trying to cut the tax bill. They just report the figures and they want to report them really positively. So yeah, it's a completely different mindset. Talking of mindset, this is the next one. So when I talked about autocratic owners before, maybe you are, maybe you're partly like that. But what you really need to do now is to make yourself redundant. In other words, work yourself out of the business day-to-day role, because no purchaser wants to take on a load of hassle when they buy a business. They need to be able to see that if you leave the business, now you might have plans to stay with that business for 6 months, 12 months, even have a paid role in that merged company, but they might not have that view. They might want you out. So you don't want to be restricting the types of purchases you can have. You need to be making it as easy as possible for a purchaser to buy your business. And if you were to leave the business today, if you went on a 3-month holiday now and didn't check in with the company, how would it fare over that 3 months? Now, some of you might say better, actually, if you're not sticking your nose in as much. But can it stand on its own 2 feet? And that's the thing that we're trying to show, that this is a business in its own right. It isn't just an owner with some staff and some clients. This is a business. So that's what you've got to do. Now, on the full exit planning workshop that Matt can do with you, there are 10 areas that a business owner typically can get involved in. And we only want you to be involved in 2 of them. So, the 80-20 rule, you're only involved in 2 of them. And that's very much the strategic areas of the business, working on the business, not in the business. You've probably heard that expression before. Working out where your strategy is going to be, where your growth is going to be, how to make the business more efficient. That's what you need to be doing. What you don't want to be doing is even selling, right? So if you can get somebody else running the sales process, the marketing, the pricing, then that's ideal, because that business will still be able to sell then once you've left. Now, the selling process is probably one of the easier ones to replace, because some of you might be quite small businesses and thinking, I haven't got the cash to recruit all these extra members of staff to do everything that I do. But what you've got to think about is how can we facilitate this at a lowest cost possible, or the lowest risk possible? That's what you need to be thinking about, risk. Because if you can bring in a member of a sales team who are mostly commission based, then your risk is a lot less, because if they don't perform, then you're not paying for them. But if you can think about any other ways that you can use your team to do the day-to-day operations of the business, then that's really what you're aiming for. So sales and the operations are the things that you really need to walk away from, and you need to somehow facilitate that business to be able to deliver those itself without you being involved. Okay. Why is that the case? Because then when everything's really systemized, the purchaser is able to come in, throw a load of money at the business, and it can scale. And that's what they want to see. They want to see this business being able to scale. Now, if you offer a really personalized service to every single client, then you're actually not helping yourself. It might sound great from a customer service perspective, but that's going to be really difficult to scale. So ideally, you want your service to look as if it's bespoke, to look as if it's personalized, but actually to have systems behind it that means that it's not, that it just rolls out. So that if you were to get £1 million injected into that business, it could absolutely fly. And just with the, you know, the extra marketing and the extra sales, it would absolutely fly. So that's what we need to be thinking about, making yourself redundant, working yourself out of the business, and doing as little as possible from the sales and the operations point of view, concentrating on the strategic areas. And MAP can certainly help you with that, and think about management information systems, KPIs, and all of those things as well.
This is the thing about, it depends where you are on the journey as well, doesn't it? Like,
yeah.
whether you are looking to maximize profit or you're looking to grow, it's, you know, people often say, how do I compare to other agencies? Well, it depends what type of agency you're trying to build and where you are on that journey of building that agency, because what your revenue per head should be at one stage in the journey is very different from what it should be at another stage of the journey, depending on whether you're trying to grow fast, whether you're trying to sell the business, whether you're trying to maximize profitability. So the point of setting KPIs, that has to come out of setting a business plan and, you know, working on a thorough business plan that is really clear that this is where we're aiming for and this is what we're doing. And then the KPIs that are relevant to you and what results you should get from tracking those KPIs will be dependent on what you're trying to achieve as a business and where you are now.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And that then leads on nicely. It's almost like we planned this, Paul. It leads on nicely to this one, because this is all about predicting the future and projections in particular. So a purchaser will want to buy something that's as low a risk as possible. And if they can almost predict what your sales are going to be, your costs are going to be, your margins are going to be, where the market's going, then that means their risk is lower, and that means they're prepared to pay more for the business. So if you can have sets of projections which are proven because you've been running them for years, you've had budgets, you've had business plans, you've had forecasts, and you look at where they're slightly out, you look at the variances and you adapt them, and you end up refining them over a period of years so that you're absolutely spot on with your business plans, and you can see where your growth is, you can see where that curve's going to be. Then you absolutely will impress a purchaser, especially if they're buying at the smaller end of the market, because they don't expect to get that. So if you can do that, you're going to be one step ahead of the competition if they're looking at different acquisition targets. So projections are so important, and wherever possible, try and refine your operations so that you have recurring customers, so we can see where the sales are going to be coming from. You have step pricing fees, you know what your costs are going to be to deliver a project. You've got a very good handle on the system of operations, so that projects don't overrun. You're talking about next time doing scope creep, so it's not the business you win a really good piece of work and then it ends up being loss making. That's just not going to be a steady, resilient business for a purchaser to be interested in. So systems all the way through, measure everything and show that as much as possible about the future is known as can be. I know, no one probably did predict COVID very well, but, things will come out of left field. But on the whole, in terms of your regular business, your day-to-day business, then you should be able to show a purchaser, a potential purchaser, where your growth plan is going to be, and for it to be credible, because you've done it before. It's not just the first time you've thrown a set of projections together, because they won't believe those at all, and they'll end up spending loads of time on due diligence to try and get a handle on that themselves, and that just drags the deal out, costs everyone more money. So if you can get that manager information really strong, you can show that you've got your KPIs, you've got your business plan, you've got your projections, and it's used all the time to direct the business, and that's the role that you as a business owner play in running that company. Then you're going to be really showing some good value growth there.
I think some of our clients as well, Kirsty, in the creative sector, are naturally good at this. It's effectively about storytelling, isn't it? Like, it's the ability to join the dots and say, when we achieved this in that year, it was as a direct result of doing this, and therefore when we do this next year and the year after, it's going to achieve this. So if you can use the past, like any acquirer of your business doing due diligence doesn't want to just rely on your say so that the business is going to scale. They want to look back in detail at the historical data, and for it to be able to tell a story. And that's also part of the importance of having a proper robust MI pack, management information pack, things like board minutes. You know, do you keep board minutes that show that you made a decision and it led to a result? All of that really good governance that we talked about a month ago with Cactus, all comes back to support you when you're looking at exiting your business, because that's what we're looking to do. We're looking to values in the eye of the beholder and all of that. You know, we're looking to create a story that's compelling to the purchaser that we're talking about now, and ideally your message will be bespoke to the purchaser that you're speaking to.
Yeah, and that's really part of the exit planning process as well, is to think about who your purchasers could be, and you know who they are in detail, you know, that company or that company or that company, and then you've got an idea then of what they're going to be looking for, and you can keep a track on what they're already buying and what they're paying for things, and understand really where their criteria is and their parameters are. So increasing your profile, again, is something I fully expect this sector to be really good at. So if you, because you do it for clients, you know, this is probably what some of you really work on, but if you have, say, a potential purchaser in the States or in the Far East, and they were to try and find a UK business in your sector that's about your size, would they find you? If they put into Google digital sector UK, where would you be? Would they come across you? Or are you only really known in the local area where you work? So having a good profile is really important on social media, in the trade industry bodies, with the you know, the awards, in the press, all the usual stuff that you'll be doing for customers. Then this is something that you'll be definitely having to do for yourself. And it's not just about you picking up sales now, it's about you having that profile globally, that you will be found. And if they were to put your company name into Google, having found you, what will come up on that first page? You know, hopefully it's all really good positive testimonials, it's good positive press articles. You know, heaven forbid it's something like a tribunal case that was in the local press. You know, we don't want any of that. We want all positive, good profile raising things. So definitely work on that. And then lastly, out of these 5 anyway, before I just give you a final thought, create some IP if at all possible. The thing about your business, it's a lot like professional services businesses, is that you're people business, very much a people business. And therefore what you're doing is you're selling your people, your staff, and you're selling your client list. Now, if that's all you're selling, then that's quite difficult to value. But if you, on top of that, are able to create some sort of IP, whether it's a product, whether it's a process, something that you can hang some figures on to say, because of that process, because of that product, we have earned this amount of money. So you need to be able to split it off in your P&L account as well, in your chart of accounts. You need to be able to measure it so that you can say, you know, we've got this is our whole business, but part of that business is because of this IP. And that, if you can demonstrate the numbers behind that, that will just make you far more valuable than another business that's just got people and a client list. So somehow thinking all the time about how can we turn this into IP, and how can we measure it so that we're able to profile it, and it stands on its own as well. So, and if you think about, can you license it? Could you get some royalties for it? Then that's how you think about, oh yeah, that's IP, that's worth something. So that's really worth thinking about, if that's possible, and with what you do. And then the last thing I just wanted to talk about is, over the last 3 or 4 years, we've recently just done some research on the businesses that we've sold on behalf of the member firms of the Corporate Finance Network. So we do the early stage research work for a lot of our firms. And of the businesses that we've sold, we found buyers for 81% of those businesses, but 19% of those businesses were sold to somebody that approached them directly. And some of you will have had this already, and I know some of you have had direct approaches in the past from potential acquirers of your business. And that might sound like an absolute fantastic red letter day, this news out the blue, how amazing. However, I have known over the years countless businesses that have had an approach from a potential purchaser, and it has really damaged their business. Because what happens is, if they are not ready to sell, if they are not in a good position, then the due diligence and the deal negotiations will just fall apart. And therefore, we may be going 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months down the line discussing with a potential purchaser for it never to happen. So number one, what has then happened is that business has, unfortunately, the business owners had his or her eye taken off the ball, and they haven't been growing their own business because they're already on a beach in the Caribbean. You know, they already think they've exited their business, and it's human nature that you just somehow start to spend a little less attention on the current business because you're thinking about the exit. So that's dangerous unless it actually happens. So make sure that you are ready at any time for that approach. And the other thing I would just say is, just in case you're not a client of MAP and you don't get this immediate advice, if you do get that approach, what we would always recommend is that you go out to market anyway at that point, and you don't just have that negotiation with that one business, but you open the market up to try and find some competitive bids from other potential purchasers. So again, you've got to be ready to do that, because that, you know, we want to get that going, and we want to get some discussions going with other potential players within a few weeks. So your information's got to be ready, your management information's got to be there, you've got to look good, it's got to be a strong business case. We've got to be able to sell the story. So red letter days are great, fantastic, and some of you will end up selling to those, some of you won't, and we need to make sure that it doesn't damage your business if that does happen. That's it from me.
And thanks, Kirsty. And so feel free to pop questions in, guys. I've got 4 questions that have been sent to me privately for obvious reasons. But the thing about that red letter day as well is, you say about taking your mind off the business, and you know, you've already got your sort of mindset on the beach in Barbados, but it's also your time, isn't it? Because the amount of time that goes into that due diligence process, particularly if it was unexpected and you've not got all your ducks in a row, there's an awful lot of demands on your business. Like, you'll start to understand your business during the due diligence process better than you've ever understood it before. True. Because the investor will be asking questions and you think, I wish I'd known this all along, like how these KPIs looked in my business, etc. And they're obviously looking at it through a very grown-up lens at that stage.
Yeah, that's it. And that's why you need to be ready for those questions. Your purchasers will be asking them.
Yeah. So I've had some really good questions here. The first one is your point about IP. So someone's asked, how do you value intangible assets like software you've created for the industry? So they've created something that helps the industry to create websites more easily. Now, without wanting to sound a cop-out, this genuinely is a really specialist area, valuing IP. And the reason it's specialist is because one of the things that will go into that valuation discussion, if you like, that valuation report, is other similar products or systems that have sold to that. So any researcher would look to see if they could see any deals in the past, wouldn't they, Kirsty, of similar products or software that have sold and what they sold for. And I think that concept alone is like a real surprise to a lot of people, because we think that there's like this fixed way of valuing a business or valuing a product software. And as I say, really, it is about working in partnership with someone who can help you on advising on selling your business, because we've got to, between us, ask the right questions of the business and of the product and sell the right story. So yes, you might look at royalties, you might look at revenues, you might look at costs, but we're also going to look at other products that sold on the market. We're going to look at who could be the potential acquirer and what will be the value of this asset in their business. Why would it be a value? How do we prove that it's value? So you've got to do a lot of sort of soft research and do a lot of number crunching and KPI crunching as well, in order to work it out. And if you got 10 corporate finance advisors, all 10 would come up with a different valuation, because they'd all be looking at it differently. But it really is about working in partnership with your advisor to try and tell the best possible story about what you've built and why you believe deep down this will be of value to another business, and then fleshing that out and putting the substance behind it.
Yeah, and how you think it's going to scale and what the market is and all of that needs to be. The more work you can do to convince a purchaser, the better, really, so that you're not relying on them to do that investigation. Because sometimes, you know, active acquirers may have acquisition teams, but they're also managing their previous acquisitions. They're trying to integrate their previous acquisitions. So they don't have massive capacity to spend on due diligence. They want to know quite quickly if something is a business they want to buy or invest some time in or not. You know, so they could give you quite a short, quick answer, or not reply at all if we reach out to them. And that would be a shame if there was a lot more to say that wasn't completely obvious. So the more you can do yourself up front, the more it appears credible, the better.
Next one is a bit of an easier question. So how do you recommend to value an agency? So agencies are simpler businesses to value. As Kirsty talked about before, very people driven, and they tend to be therefore based on their ability, their proven ability to deliver a return and deliver a profit. So many of you have seen this before, but it's effectively a multiple of the EBITDA. So the two key drivers of the valuation are the EBITDA, so earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. So in layman's terms, net profit. So how much net profit is the business making? Often I've seen, like with a lot of the deals that happen in this sector, if you're sub sort of £500,000 EBITDA, there's not a big active market of big players looking to acquire. As Kirsty said, corporate finance fees for big companies are very expensive. So the deal has to be a certain size for it to be worth them going through that due diligence process. So once you get to, it's not to say businesses can't sell below that, of course they do, and they do all the time. But once you get to £500,000, that's opening you up to the vast majority of the buyers that you'll see in the press in this industry. So then the other part of it is the multiple. We've got this sellability checklist. So if anybody wants to see that, let us know and we can send that over to you. But that helps to understand what are some of the drivers beyond, as is asked in the next question, just retainers and retention, which yes, they would be drivers, but many other drivers that input into it as well. So we talked about reliance on the business owner and how much they're involved in the day-to-day doing and decision making, and how much they are reliant on being part of the brand. Clients, you know, any individual clients taking up more than sort of 10 to 15% of your revenue will be a big alarm bell. Reliance on individual members of staff, whether you've got a unique proposition, what your growth rate is. So there are lots of factors that go into the multiple. But again, if the seller doesn't typically value the business, the buyer values the business. So if we were acting for you as the seller, we'd be helping to paint the best possible story of why we think you tick as many of those boxes as possible, and why the boxes that you do tick, you tick them really well to show the buyer that they should value it higher. But at the end of the day, you know, we're kind of in the hands of the buyer and what they're willing to pay for it. All we can do is paint the best possible story and give the substance behind it. How do you take an agency to market when you have a unique proposition? So that comes down to doing a lot of work to get the message right. You can't rush this process, because if you rush it, you'll end up putting off the buyer straight away because you've not done your homework, or it'll be a long process to try and encourage them to come up with the right fee. So what you want to do is prepare yourself for all the questions that the buyer is going to ask, and build those into what we call an IM, so an information memorandum up front that goes into all the detail as to why this is a fantastic business to buy for the kind of acquirers that we've identified in the research that are going to be most interested in your business. And then we write to those buyers and we make that presentation as bespoke, customized as possible. Initially, we can do that on a no names basis. So it's confidential and they don't know who you are. And then if they show interest, we get them to sign an NDA, we say who you are, and then we start negotiations and discussions at that point. So that's how we take it to market. I hope that helps. What's the typical multiple for agencies in current climate? From Steve. It can be anywhere from about 4 to about 10 times in reality, Steve, which is obviously is a massive range, but not all agencies are obviously equal. It's quite a generic term. You know, a software development agency is very different to a digital marketing agency. Typically, a software development agency will be largely project based, and people-based. A digital marketing agency might have more retainers, less reliance on big clients, more technology, and therefore more efficient, more profitable. So all those things will drive the value up. So somewhere in that range, but perhaps we could do some research at some point, Kirsty, to present this back to our
yeah, well, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, that every business is different, and that's the point of this presentation, to show that those two businesses at the beginning that had the same profitability would not get the same value. Business B would definitely get a higher value. So because you enter into a negotiation process, so you start off at the beginning with just a purchaser might say, okay, based on this one-page flyer that we send them under this no names basis, first of all, or they'll be thinking, oh, it might be worth whatever, $1 million or something. But then they'll dig under the bonnet, as I said, they'll start the due diligence, they'll meet you, they'll understand more about the potential. The more then credible you can make that information for them, the more believable, the less risk that they have, perceived risk that they have in that acquisition, the more they will pay for it. And if we get 2 and 3 and 4 potential purchasers all looking at your business, then that gets that competitive tendering up. So that's how we move it from being £1 million up to nearly maybe £2 million. And every business is different, every case is different.
Yeah, we need to move on. There's just one key thing I think you did there, which was about risk. Yep. And I think that's another misunderstanding, if you like, is often people saying the businesses think it's all about presenting the opportunity to the investor, but often the opportunity is kind of a given, and it's more about risk protection. Like the investor wants to know, if I'm moving my money from the safe place it is now and putting it there, what are all the indicators that this could go wrong and could flop and not deliver the results that the business owner has promised?
I'd encourage everybody on the call here to think. It's quite difficult when you're a business owner yourself and you're only thinking about selling, to understand the way the purchaser will be thinking. So I'd encourage all of you to think about, if you were buying a business in your sector now, what would you want to see? What would you pay for it? And if I was to ask all of you, how many years payback would you want if you bought a business? Some of you, because of your risk profile, might say, I want payback within 1 year. That's the only risk I'm prepared to take. Some of you might say, I'll wait 3 years. Some of you might say 8 years. Everybody's got a different risk profile and a different understanding of what they can do with that business. But as Paul said, it's the purchaser that makes the offer. We don't put selling prices on any business because we don't want to cap. That would just be a ceiling, wouldn't it? Everybody bids lower, no one bids higher. So we never put a selling price on. We always open it up to purchasers, and depending on what they're going to do with it will depend on their perception of the value. But I would also say, bear in mind that the opportunity might be there, but it is for the purchaser to make that opportunity happen. And therefore, it's their risk, it's their investment. So it's for them to say how much they're prepared to risk, how much they're prepared to take.
Yeah, great. Kirsty, thank you very much for your time today. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.